hear an awesome talk tonight, you won't have to wait very long to hear the next awesome talk. That will be on Monday, February 3rd at 7 p.m., all about wintering in Yellowstone. So that should be great. So come right back. And our program guide, our spring program guide, will be hitting mailboxes in a couple weeks. So look out for that if you're in the 43551 zip code. We have a bunch of really cool programs coming up in the spring. One that I'm super excited about is we're going to host painter Rob Vanettvelt. We've hosted him before. He does these amazing giant paintings with house paint on drop cloth. And so he's going to be exhibiting whale paintings, and they're going to be incredible. And we're going to do a lot of whale-based programming. So we're going to read Moby Dick and talk about Moby Dick. There's a Moby Dick opera, and there's someone at BG that knows all about it, so he's going to come and talk about it. And hopefully we're going to do a marine tour of the Marine Lab at BGSU, because they have a Marine Lab. Wow. At BGSU. So stay tuned for all those programs, and now I'm going to hand it over to Craig Spicer from the Wood County Parks.
Oh, is it? That's okay. That's all right. Well, hey, good evening. Big thanks from Wood County Parks to Way Library. This is the first year that we've done this Base Camp Stories series in partnership with Way Library, and I think it's been going really, really well. So, again, my name is Craig Spicer from the Wood County Park District, and this is the third to last Base Camp Stories series talk. The Base Camp Stories series is all about taking people who call Northwest Ohio their home. Even though their adventures may take them all over the place, we all have something in common, and that's Northwest Ohio, Southeast Michigan is our base camp that all our adventures go out to, or go out from. So, on top of that, if anybody wants to, hopefully, if this inspires them, and you want to get involved in this sort of thing, please hit us up at Wood County Parks. We have all kinds of different programs to get your feet wet. Somebody's trying to beat me to it. I don't know who it was. But today's speaker is somebody who has been doing talks and helping with instructional courses and all sorts of things. He's been helping Wood County Parks with all that stuff for a while now. He's been a great person to know personally in my own kayaking professional journey. But Eric is a American Canoe Association kayak instructor in level 3. Ooh. How do you realize what levels are up? But
500 levels.
All over the Great Lakes. He has so many different stories. He has a lot of expertise. So if any of you are interested in kayaking, even a little bit, you are in the right room with the right person. I don't want to get in the way of listening to another amazing story that I will add to my bucket list. So without further ado, please welcome Eric Slough.
Hello. Fantastic. Yeah, we've been doing this, wow, this is at least 6, 7 presentations I think we've done. I've been fortunate, I've been a lot of different places, so, and I like to share. I always tell people it's like me trying to share my vacation photos with other people. It's like the slideshow kind of thing. But where we're located here in the metro, fantastic jumping off spot for a lot of different adventures, especially if you're into the kayaking, paddling kind of world. We have a lot of big water in the area. Show of hand, we have a lot of outdoors people here, camping, hiking, paddling. Anyone, kayakers, canoers? I see a few familiar faces in our little circle there. This is a presentation that I've wanted to do because if you are looking for maybe like a first real backcountry experience, you can car camp and you can drive in and hike in places, but if you're looking from a water perspective, I always thought this was a really cool spot to get to for a real kind of, if it wants to be your first backcountry paddling experience. There are ferries that service these islands as well, but as far as getting there from water, it's not too difficult. trip to get there, and there's a lot of bang for it. There's a lot of things to see and do that really makes you feel like, man, I went somewhere. And it's not that far of a drive. It's not that hard to get to, weather conditions aside. But it's just a really neat kind of first-time backcountry paddle camping experience. So as Craig mentioned, Eric Slough, I've been doing this for a really long time, doing the water type stuff, got in the instruction type stuff, got in with a really good group of people to help raise my skill level. I've done a lot of instructing, done a lot of teaching, a lot of presentations, done a lot of really cool backcountry adventures, which is what I really love. I kind of joke, I tell people, I've never really done a lot of backpacking, but if you put everything in a kayak, which is essentially you're wearing your backpack, that sounds like fun to me. Backpacking sounds like a lot of work, but yeah, you throw in your gear into a boat and you go into remote areas, whether it's Canada, the Great Lakes, anything around here, it's a lot of fun. So North and South Manitou Islands. First off, does anybody know where this is? A few people heard of it? Heard of it? Now, if I say Sleeping Bear Dunes, all right, know where that's at. So, so if you go to Sleeping Bear Dunes and you're looking to the west, there's a couple islands there. So that's what you're looking out onto. So, without further ado, North and South Manitou Islands. So, in the times that I've been out to these islands three separate times. So I've been out there 3 times, 3 separate experiences, 3 separate things. I got a lot of data, so bear with me because I'm trying to blend. This isn't just one trip. I've got 3 trips. I'm kind of blending into little pockets and pieces of things that you can do when you go out there. So 3 different islands. So there we go. I always like to, when I go out, I share these experiences with a lot of awesome people. I've been out there 3 times. There's me, my friend Susan, my buddy Kelly, my friend Alan, and then my buddy Jeff. That mixture of crew are pretty highly skilled people with the right experience, the right skill, the right gears that we're able to do some of these things. So my buddy Jeff couldn't be here tonight, but good group. It's a lot of fun. When you do these things, it's fun to share with other people, right? So kind of where we're looking here. So if you go up into, we're fortunate with Michigan, right? You got your Michigan map on you, right? You got the thumb. So we're about right here. So you get Traverse City here, and you kind of go west to get to Lake Michigan. If you're familiar with Empire's right here. Sleeping Bear Dunes kind of runs here. You got Glen Arbor is right here. So then you got North Manitou, South Manitou, and if you go a little further north here to Leland, you can catch the ferry out of Leland. So just from a geography standpoint, that's kind of where we're heading. As you can see, South Manitou is a little smaller than North Manitou. So getting there. Hop on the expressway again, just to kind of give you a frame of reference of where we're going and what we're doing. Again, within about a 5-hour drive, depending when you leave, and head north, you can get up there and again get a lot of bang for your buck in a fairly short drive there. So North Manitou Island. I kind of did the snapshot here of the island itself. And so if you're orienting, you're kind of north is kind of that way, south is this way, and the red lines kind of show you that if you go, we go by kayak, we haven't gone by ferry, but if you kayak, when you get to the island, there's some pretty good hiking as well. So even if you take the ferry out there and you want to camp, there's a lot to do and a lot to see and a lot of history along with visiting these islands. So you can see the red loop there. On one of our trips, we got kind of weather bound in this area of the island, and so we basically did I think it's about 11-mile hike, this section here that we did. Not a ton of elevation, but a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of old growth forests on the islands. You can see, and the history of it that goes back, there's a lot of former settlements too. So you see a lot of ruins of different farms and things that they had going on there. So, so North Manitou Island. This picture here kind of shows what used to be the lifeguard saving station and what used to be kind of a town. Back in the early 1900s, a lot of these islands were owned by wealthy individuals that would have resorts, and they want people out there to vacation for the rich and famous. What you're seeing here is kind of over here on this side of the island. So it took a couple of trips before I was able to see that, where we came around and paddled around the island there. So that's North Manitou Island. South Manitou Island, again, is just south of there. That's where this lighthouse, as you see here, the South Manitou Light, that's the last of 3 lighthouses that were constructed there over time. And the unique thing about South Manitou is the actual harbor. So if you go way back in the history of the islands and the shipping of the Great Lakes, there weren't a whole lot of protected deep water harbors if you're going from Buffalo, New York, up through the Straits of Mackinac, again, map of Michigan, you come through here, on your way to Chicago. So this deep water harbor here was kind of the hub of, get out of the weather kind of thing. And both of these islands supplied hardwood for the steamer ships. So that's a lot of the history of these islands. You had the old growth forests that were on them, and they would have logging communities out here that would chop down the trees and sell the wood to the steamer ships that would come through there. So when you come onto the island, this lighthouse you can see is right here, and most of the kind of village of what is in this little tip here, and then you have this bay, and that's where the ferry, if you take the ferry over, that's where that would dock as well. And I threw this in here. So same island, again, from a hiking perspective, this kind of shows some of the hiking trails. So if you land here at the ferry, you can hike here to there's 3 campgrounds on this island that I'll cover. So you have Bay Campground, the Weather Station Campground, and the campground that I love because it's away from everything else is out here, the Popple Campground. So usually we make land right here by the lighthouse. The couple times we've been there, when you get to both islands, there's a ranger there, and they give you the leave no trace talk, as campers and being respectful of the environment and whatnot. So we land there, they check our permits, we'll talk about that as well, and then you can go off. Now you don't reserve these campsites, these are kind of first come, first serve. So the times we kind of time it up, we can get there so we can check in, and then we boogie and we get around to the campground there. But last trip that we were there, we were camped here, we made the hike back across the island. We did a lap of the Lake Florence here, and then it was monsooning on us, so we didn't quite make it as far as we wanted to, but you get here and you see these bluffs. So just like the actual sand of the Sleeping Bear Dunes, both of these islands have amazing sand bluffs that are just, you're next to them and you feel so small because you're going stories and stories high up the sand dunes. So I've got some really cool pictures of that. So on a trip like this, we do some paddling, we do obviously some camping, do a little cooking, we do a little hiking, doing all that kind of stuff that is an outdoorsy kind of guy that we enjoy doing. So if you go to both islands, you can hike. There's a lot of established hiking. And same thing with this island as well. From the logging days going forward, there were homesteads. So the Park Service is kind of letting everything sort of kind of drift into the woods and kind of, they're not really maintaining them per se. But you can see the old homesteads where people used to live. When the logging sort of kind of petered out, you had a lot of families that started apple and cherry orchards. If you know that part of Michigan, they're big on cherries and the fruit and that kind of stuff. So they're kind of in an isolated area. So the different things that they grow, I guess, they're between the pollen and the things that whatnot is a good environment for growing those types of things. So they had different fruit farms and things that have now long gone away, and the old growth forests are starting to come back. So the times that we've been up there, usually we'll take off for a long weekend. We'll leave on a Thursday after work, and we'll go to Empire. And I can't say enough, in Empire is the Empire County Campground. It is an awesome little rustic campground. Have you been there? I see it nodding. It is really cool. Like, I'd like to stay there for a couple of days. So we'll pull into Empire after dark. They're fantastic. You call them. They put your little camping things on the door of the office, and just, you pay for it, you pick it up. And it's just a neat little campground there. This is the last trip that we went. I always bug Craig about doing a kayak or a hammock class too, because that's a whole other. There's camping, there's hammock camping and whatnot, and if you like gear, that's a whole other black hole of gear if you get into the hammock camping thing. But it's the way we go. I like to be able to pack the stuff in a kayak. It's a little more modular, and the comfort for me, off the charts between tent camping and hammock. So I can teach a whole class just on the hammock stuff too. So we have a lot of fun doing that. So usually in the Great Lakes, we're doing pretty good because there's typically trees. If I was in the desert somewhere, you might be a little hard up to find trees, but Great Lakes is looking pretty good. So doing your pre-homework, just like any trip, you want to do your homework ahead of time. You can't just assume on certain things. So when you go out there, North Manitou Island is all backcountry camping. So as long as you're 300 yards off the shore, you can just have at it wherever you want to go. But you need a backcountry permit, just like anywhere. So whether you're taking the ferry, usually if we're in Empire, we stop at there's the little visitor center right there at Empire, where we stop and get our permits and our camping passes and everything. So you got to pay for that ahead of time, because they will check. There's rangers that are hiking and check around to make sure that you've paid. At South Manitou, again, you have the 3 campgrounds. North Manitou, wide open, backcountry camping. South Manitou, you got that far campsite that we like to go to, Popple. You have a short little walk from the ranger station to the bay, and then there's like another campsite called the weather station. I guess historically there must have been a weather station there. So there's only 3 places you can go that are actual designated campsites. After that, you can't be anywhere else. You purchase your backcountry permits. Everything's pack in, pack out, leave no trace. If you are on North Manitou and you need to take care of business, everything is buried or packed out. Where we are at on South Manitou, there is an outhouse. So that being said, you still want to make sure you have that covered, because again, we're leaving no trace. And then when we have paddled out to the island, if you're familiar with the area, there's Glen Haven, and then there's Good Harbor, Good Harbor Bay. So depending which island, we went to North Manitou at a Good Harbor, and then we went to South Manitou at a Glen Haven. So those are 2 pretty good launches there. So the legend of Sleeping Bear. So Sleeping Bear, raise your hand if you've been to Sleeping Bear, right? Does anybody know the legend of Sleeping Bear?
No, I was going to ask.
All right, the legend of Sleeping Bear. So way back, I've read a bunch of books, and there's a lot of Ojibwe Native American history amongst the Great Lakes. It's fascinating. I love digging into it. But the legend of Sleeping Bear is that on the Wisconsin side of Lake Michigan, a mother bear swam across Lake Michigan. She made it. Unfortunately, the 2 cubs that she was with her didn't make it. So the 2 islands north there symbolize her cubs that didn't make it. So Mama Bear laid down on the shoreline in mourning for her cubs that didn't quite make it. Now, this is a historical photo. If you look at it, it sure looks like a mama bear laying on her side. Now the sands have shifted and time has eroded and there's sand everywhere, but the historical photo, you can see where you get kind of the mama bear kind of look for it. Now there's another legend that there was a great fire on the Wisconsin side, and that's what pushed Mom and her cubs across Lake Michigan to swim and not make it. So that's kind of the legend of Sleeping Bear in kind of a nutshell, on why that region and the islands, kind of have that connection to the Ojibwe culture. North Manitou Island is 8 miles long, 4 miles wide. A lot of Native American history out there. There's volumes of books and things. But we're talking about some of the dates between 8,000 and 600 BC is when they found artifacts from that time era. And they found stone and flint tools, copper, some pottery, remains of a canoe, just some things out there. So there's a history on these islands that go way back before European man hit it. I mentioned before, the initial settlements were primarily there to log the islands, to supply the steamer ships that were coming through the area. And then after that kind of petered out, you had the farmers that were apples and cherries and whatnot. And then anything that was built after 1950, the Park Service is torn down. So they, again, the rest of it's just kind of left alone, but they took more of the modern stuff and they've kind of gotten rid of it. And you see what was originally built there. And then on North Manitou, it was owned by this foundation, the William R. Angel Foundation, that would transport deer there. Now, there's still a deer population on the islands, but not like it was. They still have actually a deer hunt. I think they do it annually out there. But it used to be for the rich and wealthy to be able to go out there and hunt deer in kind of a contained environment. So between the, even though it's Sleeping Bear Dunes, there's no bears on the Manitou Islands, so you don't have to worry about that. You got to watch the raccoons though, and there's some pretty crafty chipmunks, but no bears. So, and then South Manitou is a little bit smaller. It's 3 miles wide by 3 miles long by wide. Again, it's the only deep water harbor basically between Buffalo and Chicago. Boats would dock in there. And then it talks about some of the original stuff. There was actually a town. It was kind of the center because of that harbor there. You had a blacksmith shop. You had a general store. You had a school, churches, an actual population of people just because of that kind of natural harbor, that crescent shape there. And then one of the interesting facts I found, too, that because of the sand, that area is nothing but sand, a lot of the sand and gravel was used to rebuild Chicago after the Great Fire, when the cow kicked the can over and the Chicago burned down, where the song goes. But the Garden City Sand Company, they sent barges and they excavated sand, and that helped rebuild the city of Chicago, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then there's still a lot of old growth forests on the island that didn't get logged. They didn't get a chance to it. So when you go hiking up there, you get to see a lot of that fun stuff. So. All right, so we'll get out of the text stuff. So when you launch from the Glen Haven, it's kind of cool. It's kind of a historic little settlement there. And when you get your passes at the visitor center, you also get a parking pass. So we were able to park our vehicle here for a couple of days and not have to worry about it. So when you go to launch, there's a little turnaround here where you can drop your gear off. This little red cannery building is now a kind of a little museum, and there's some old wooden ships and some life-saving type stuff, the old life-saving rowboats and whatnot. And it's kind of a neat little museum they open up, and you can kind of wander in and out of it. There's an old historic fishing ship there, but you basically unload your gear and hike it right down to the water. So. That's in Glen Haven. And then Good Harbor Bay is kind of around the bend. It's a little further of a drive, but if you're going to North Manitou Island, it's maybe slightly closer. It's a little more direct shot. When you launch here, you kind of have protection. This big point sticks out right here. So if the wind's coming out of the west or the south, you have some protection. And in this picture, you can see there's North Manitou Island right there that you're eventually going towards. So yeah, it's on the horizon. It's not too far. It's only about a 7 or 8 mile paddle. So depending on how hazy it is and what wind is blowing, it's not too bad. But yeah, when you go, there's not much beach, right? It's whether the water's coming. So you get to the beach, this is looking left and that's looking right. So same thing. You can park your car there, you get a pass, and they'll leave you alone. So yeah, if you're launching, it's you, sand, and there's the water. Have fun. When we were coming back from our North Manitou Island trip, we paddled back from the island. And we landed, and we started to get our gear, and it looked like a mom and her daughter came to the beach, and they waded out, and they put on their swimming caps, and they just took off. She had like a floating thing. She put like a belt on with a little flotation little thing with a little flag on it, and they took off. And we don't know where she was heading for this point. I don't know where they just were swimming, like open water swimming. Like we kind of stood there on the beach and watched them, and she just must got a workout in. But and the water's still not very, very warm. I mean, you're still talking, it's Lake Michigan, and it's north, but not too far north, but it's brisk. You get in the water, so it's still a little cool. So this just more shots. So this is you're standing on the beach looking out. So that's the far edge of the harbor, and you're looking out. Here is North Manitou Island. That's me smiling because I'm in the boat, and that's my buddy Jeff. So in the distance is the other part of the harbor there. So the South Manitou Island Light is such, I've got it on all my slides. It's such a cool feature of the island. And again, we're talking about shipping days of the Great Lakes, and between lighthouses and then the life-saving stations, which are kind of cool because of the shipwrecks. Now, if you look in history around these islands, at a minimum, there's 50 shipwrecks. So they would have life-saving crews basically for the shipping industry because you're going to run aground eventually or hit a shoal or hit something. And so they had life-saving stations on the islands. If you ever get a chance to, over at the Marblehead Lighthouse over in Catawba, they did a reproduction of the life-saving station. They used to be where the current Coast Guard station is now. It used to be there, but they did a reproduction, and it's really kind of cool. You got the old rowboats and the architecture and things that they did. It's kind of neat. But they have the life-saving or the lighthouses. First one was put in 1938. They redid it in 1958. And then they got this one here in 1871. It's kind of cool. It's all in the side of the lighthouse. Now, if you go during the day, you can go up in the lighthouse, and it's really cool. So I'll get some pictures of that. So this one was a little taller than the first two, and then they have a third order, and it's Fresnel, I think is how you pronounce it, lens in there. And the science band is kind of cool because it focuses the light And so the light coming off this could be seen for almost 18 miles. So again, it's projecting over the Great Lakes, signaling that there's islands and shoals and don't run aground. So South Manitou Island Lighthouse, again, you can climb up the stairs. There's no elevator. You climb up the stairs in it. We landed, had a little snack, and then this is a view looking to, this is part of the harbor right here of South Manitou, and then this is North Manitou. You're looking across in the distance there, so you're up. And then this is I think they call it the fog house, part of the building there. There would be a fog, a sounding fog that would go off. And then the 1871 on the lighthouse there. And then there's a close-up picture of the lens. And then if you're not into heights, don't look down, but that's looking straight down. There. But it's really cool. I mean, how often do you get a chance to go up in a lighthouse? And the views are amazing too. I mean, you can see the mainland. You can see North Manitou. You can see South Manitou. So flipping over to North Manitou. So this is a stock photo of the shoal light. So when we launched for that particular trip of the 3 trips, the wind was pretty much howling. And my goal was to stay north of that lighthouse. And just like any vessel, if you're under power, you have control, right? You have control, the wind's blowing this way, and there's things you can do at a kayak to kind of keep you in a direction. Well, my buddy, he's a good, strong paddler, maybe not as quick or fast as I am. Well, as you're keeping this, we want to stay north of this, we kept it in front of us, and it was still in front of us as we kept rotating around, like this. So as much as I want to stay north of that lighthouse and get to a different point, we just kind of did the clock right around it. So we ended up, because of the wind and the waves, we ended up taking a break about right there on the lighthouse, catch our breath, and just like anything, we ended up, instead of going to this far point that's over here, we ended up somewhere in here, because the wind, you kind of slip slide along the way as the wind blows you, which isn't bad. I mean, we got there, but yeah, I felt like I saw that lighthouse forever as we just sort of kind of clocked around it, and eventually we got in the wind shadow and kind of took a breather there. But once you leave the mainland, I mean, here's what you see leaving the harbor. There's not a whole lot of civilization out there. So South Manitou Dock, this is where the ferry lands. This is where kayakers lands. This is where the rangers would catch you, do your little talk kind of thing. There's the old life-saving station. They've got set up as a little office there. The buildings are cool. I mean, there used to be cottages that are now like ranger residents and whatnot. So it's just neat to walk around there. If you, as part of your trip, just like anything, are you carrying water? Are you pumping water? Are you sourcing water? You kind of need water. Now on South Manitou, the only potable water is available, right? There's a little water spigot right behind you. So if you want to actually get water for your trip, whether you're mixing your food or whatever you're doing, you can get it from there. Or we pump our water. I get filters and everything that we pump. So we were on the far end of this island, 4 miles away on the north end. So we would pump our water right out of Lake Michigan. So as you see on the dock, and then on here, this is just the other side, that big deep water harbor. What you're looking at, that's not North Manitou. That's just the other side of the harbor. There you go. More of the South Manitou Island dock. These are just offices and outbuildings as part of the what used to be the town of South Manitou. Now they've done some improvements. When we were there, when we went to the lighthouse, see a little boardwalk that Susan's standing on. There was little boardwalks everywhere because again, walking on sand is kind of not a lot of fun. So they have these little boardwalks, and I think they've made some more improvements, and they've made some larger boardwalks up there now. I think some people, where's Brian? You guys were up there. Have they done anything? Yeah. Have they done anything more with that little path to the lighthouse? Did they improve that, I thought?
Lighthouse is boardwalks.
Yeah, they did a little bit more. I think the second time we were there, it was all tore up, and I think they were putting a little more walkable area along there. So yeah, we have a crew here that went out there last year. Raise your hand. Yeah, a few people that went out there last year. Awesome. So they're fact checking me, right? So this is the beach outside the Popple campground. So we checked in at the ranger station, went clear all the way around the harbor, way to the north end, because we want to get away from people, right? We want to go and camp there. So very nice, gentle beach. So you have a beach here, you have some beach grass, and then in this tree line, it went up to where the campsites are. So it's not quite vertical, but it was pretty far up. And there's a pole right there I think someone's underwear is hanging on it, but it had a little camping symbol on it. So that's there, and this is actually, it's hard to see how steep this is, but it was a nice path that went off and it ducked into the trees. So when you're carrying gear to a campsite, it wasn't too bad. So hold that picture in mind because things changed a few years later. So now when you get to Popple, there's a number of campsites. There's 5 or 6 campsites there. A couple of them were taken because then it's first come, first serve. You have people getting off the ferry and making a beeline towards the island. We actually had to kind of carry our gear through the camping area and kind of up on this other little ridge. So we're up above, pretty far up above the beach, and there's some other campsites down here. And so we had a mixture. We had some people with tents. There's me and my little hammock. There wasn't a whole lot of place to hang, so I'm on a tree that's kind of hanging over the ravine that way, and I'm on that tree there, but I'm not quite the perfect hang, but I still have my hammock thing going there. And again, at this site, there's an outhouse, and then the middle picture is just kind of the path between campsites. Again, it's backcountry, so you got to keep mind your P's and Q's where you're walking. You get off path, and you can get lost. And I got a little story on that one too. So then, fast forward a few years. That was 2014, 2022. This is Popple again, but a different campsite. And we had some weather, so we kind of had our encampment set up. So my buddy and I, my hammock was over here with my tarp. His hammock, well, that's mine, that's his. And then we had another tarp that sort of kind of went over the middle of everything to kind of give us a place to sit and socialize. But yeah, we had some pretty good weather. So you always have extras. I got all my gear. I always carry a few extra things and whatnot. And so we were able to kind of tarp off that area. But if you step back, again, you step back a little bit, you can see it's still rustic camping. This isn't your KOA. It's your backcountry, and we're still up above the water pretty far. If you look through the trees and go way down to the beach, we're kind of up on a bluff. So yeah, if you like backcountry camping, again, it's a pretty good experience. So that path earlier, there was a nice, gently sloping path down to the beach. So we're coming around, and I'm like, I know what I'm looking for. I've been here before, even though it was in 2014. So there should be a little sign there with a little camping thing on it that you can see from the water. Well, we're paddling around the island, and I'm looking. I'm like, because you're looking at a chart, you're looking at a map, you're kind of, okay, we should be about there. And I don't see the little post in the ground with the camping symbol. And you just passed this, and I just happened to look up, and I saw a kid run at the top of the bluff. And I think, okay, there's a kid up there. Our campsite's got to be close. So we paddle a little further. Okay, I think we're too far. So we zigzag back. And I said, I think from memory, this might be it. Well, the path that went up to the campsites was gone. It was vaporized. And I'm looking up there. Somebody had laid this piece of driftwood. You have we're down here. So you had to climb up here, grab the root ball of that, and then somebody had thrown this here, and the actual post, they had a little camping thing, someone had jammed into the side of this hill. It's like right here, it's like pointing out at you. And then you had to kind of hold on to and lug your stuff up this little crevasse and then boop, pop into the trees. So yeah, things had changed a little bit. I don't know, the Park Service didn't really mark the sites very well, but yeah, that was, needless to say, once you carried your gear up to your campsite, you really didn't want to climb back down. It was kind of hard moving stuff. So, and there's our kind of campsite there. So that's my buddy Jeff and I. Again, we're just socializing, we're hanging out. We got the tarp thing going. It's raining like crazy. We like to cook and eat. I like to. Usually I eat pretty well in the backcountry, so we did our little hot dog thing there, and I think we had peppers and hot dogs and whatnot, and just, again, that's part of the fun, is just hanging out and socializing, and ooh, what do you got? Ooh, what do you got? Let's throw this together and make something. So we eat pretty well. So in 2014, so jumping back a little bit, so we, South Manitou and North Manitou. So we did kind of the same thing. We hit 2 islands on that first trip. So we camped a night at the Popple campground, and then let's scoot over to North Manitou. And the idea is that we were going to go around North Manitou, because as a kayaker, you see an island and you want to go around it, right? You just don't paddle to it, you got to go around it. So we were getting ready to leave, and the weather started to kick up a little bit. And we're like, well, where the wind's blowing, we can make it over there. It's not that far. It's only about 3 or 4 miles across the channel to get over to the other island. So we packed up, we left, And this is kind of, weather's coming in, a few little white caps, it's not too bad, but when we got over to North Manitou, again, it's full backcountry. There is no infrastructure there. You are on your own. And it was kind of cool. It kind of reminded me of kind of like being in the Carolinas with the beach grass and, you know, kind of landing. So where we hit the beach there, not much of a beach, but it's kind of the shoreline grass all the way up to a steep bluff that went up the campsites. And you can see there's our kayaks all kind of lined up along there. Nothing prettier than a kayak on the beach, right? You know, it's kind of cool. So, but just, again, the experiences are pretty cool. So our North Manitou Island, so this is my 2014 trip. Again, we're backcountry, so you're into the woods. And we had some weather, so we made a little like kitchen area. So this is where we kind of hung out, because it's no fun hanging out in your individual tents, right? So there are these logs that kind of like had kind of fallen and whatnot, and so we kind of put a tarp up, and so we sat there and socialized and played cards and just sort of kind of hung out. We did do a big hike on this afternoon as well, but it's kind of fun hanging out underneath there in our kind of kitchen area. Now, where the tents are, you can see there's a tent here in the foreground, and you can see a tent in the background, and it's pretty dense. And we're kind of at the shoreline, but you go back into the woods, it's one of those things, you've turned around, if you don't know where you're at, you can get lost. And the day or so later, when we were getting ready to load up to paddle home, my buddy Kelly, I'm packing up, and he comes walking by me like this. He goes, "There's an hour of my life I'll never get back." So he ducked into the woods to take care of some business, and he got turned around, and he wandered around for an hour until he saw someone's red tent or whatever it was. But he's like, "There's an hour of my life I'll never get back again." So. Yeah, so that's not funny. It's funny, but not funny. So we never would have left him, but yeah, you can get turned around real quick in an area that's not necessarily marked. So this was really cool. So our first trip, we got kind of weathered in, but we were there camping, having a good time. So right at where this bluff came down and where it hit that grass and the beach was this cypress tree, little cypress, and right below it was a natural, see this big branch coming out? There was a natural spring coming right out of the side of the hill. It was awesome. You can see, and somebody had kind of like circled some rocks up, and we kind of added to it. So here's the tree right here, and it's literally coming out of the hill, crystal clear, ice cold water that kind of pooled right here. And we're like, we didn't even filter it. I mean, it's literally coming right out of the sand. I mean, it's not like there's a source, that you could have a dead animal upstream, this whatever. But it was like, and so we, we're reading a book. We put our hammocks right here, and the water was coming right here in this little pool. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever, because you got this great campsite, you got this awesome view, and you have like fresh water, like right there. So. Yeah, that was kind of a really neat thing you don't see. I've only seen that one other time. We're in the Georgian Bay where you just put your your mug right underneath it and drink it right from the source because it was coming right out of the rock. But yeah, it was kind of cool. Yeah, again, just our North Manitou Island camp there. That's kind of our kitchen area. So my buddy Jeff and I went back in 2017. So this is the trip where we kind of got hung up behind the lighthouse, and we were there just after Labor Day, so a little bit after kind of the peak season for vacationers and everything. And we were in line to get our permits and our passes at the visitor center. We went to the visitor center, and a tree or someone had hit a tree, and it took out the power lines at the visitor center. So we had to go to the D.H. Day campground, which is another state-run campground, and get our passes and permits there. And we got there just behind another group of people, and we were like, well, do we go north, do we go south, what do we want to do on this trip? And this group of people in front of us said, we're going to South Manitou. So when Jeff and I stepped up, we said, we're going to north. And so this big group was going to South Manitou, we're going to North Manitou. And she said, oh, great, there's only one other set of passes that we have sold for the entire weekend on North Manitou. So one other set of passes. And other than that, the only other individual on the island was a park ranger. So like, cool, we got, North Manitou is huge. It's 8 miles long. It's 3 miles wide. So Jeff and I are paddling. We get hung up behind that lighthouse. We finally make it to shore. We make it to shore. I'm like, Jeff, I know the most perfect campsite ever. I remember, I know where it's at. So we went up and down that shoreline trying to find that little natural spring, whatever. I'm like, it's here. It's got to. I know from memory. It's got to be here. So we eventually, we've been paddling for a long time. We put in, 10, 12 miles or whatever, and he's followed me up and down. I'm like, it's here. It's got to be here somewhere. So I eventually find it. That cute little spring had turned into a muddy, insect-infected bog. It wasn't as like picturesque. Like half the tree was dead. It wasn't green. Where we had our hammocks, it was gone. The beach grass was just a muddy hole. It was like I was so like distraught. I was like, oh my God! I climbed up on the bluff and where our little kitchen area was, where those trees had fallen. It was still sort of kind of there, but it wasn't as cool before. But I'm like, oh man, I built this thing up and. Yeah, we struck out, whatever. So we get back in our boats. Now you left in the morning, it's been, midday, it's in the middle of the afternoon. There's only one other set of people on the entire island. So we decided we didn't want to camp there because it's muddy and crappy and insects. So we went up the shoreline to the second most perfect campsite you've ever been to. It is gorgeous. We land our boat, we start to get our stuff out. We're like, let's go check this out. So we kind of climb up this path. It's like this, and you go up onto this bluff up here, and you're looking back over Lake Michigan, and I'm standing there like this, and I'm like, this is awesome. And I look over, and I see the rear end of a guy putting a tent stake into the ground. I'm thinking, there's 40 square miles but the only other person on the island had gotten off of the ferry, hiked across the entire island to the exact spot that we had kayaked to, and was putting their tent up like 25 yards from where we landed. And I'm like, you gotta be crazy. This is seriously, like, of all, this entire island, that's where they ended up with. So I'm like standing there, I'm like, literally, you're right there. And I'm like, so we went back down and we paddled up the shoreline another couple miles, and we found another campsite. But I'm like, Murphy's Law, right? It's like, holy smokes. Like, really? There's only one other couple on the entire island, and they're right where we were at. So, but it turned out pretty good. You had this, kind of tree-lined area. Again, you're looking back at South Manitou at this point. So again, for hammocking and the stuff that we do, it's a great spot, and just I can't for backcountry camping, it's a great experience. So just a couple more other pictures. This kind of the beach grass area. Now this is where our boats are. This is one of my favorite pictures here. You're looking back onto South Manitou. So here's the crossing. It's not terribly far. It's 2 miles, maybe 3 miles. Just looking back, it may seem like 100 miles if you don't know what you're doing, but yeah, we scooted back across there, and again, that's kind of the shoreline of where we were on that kind of south side of North Manitou Island. North Manitou Island, so still on North Manitou, so we're on the south side. The little village where they used to have cottages and the industrial people kind of set up their vacation land is on the north side of the island. This is kind of what it looks like today. It's just sort of kind of owned by the Park Service, and they sort of kind of use it, don't really use it. And then this is just a historical photo. Actually, I took this one out in my youth. Yeah. So, yeah, me and Dad were out there. No. But, yeah, this is just a historical photo. You can see there's much more buildings and things that are no longer there. But again, things change. Just like on South Bass Island, used to have the Hotel Victory where the state park is, and that hotel rivaled the one on Mackinac Island back in the day that burned down. It's no longer there. But yeah, things return to nature, but yeah, kind of before and after, and you can just walk around the buildings and kind of peek in the windows, and it's just kind of cool. So this is the life-saving station that they've kind of repurposed into an office there. Actually, the one in Marblehead kind of looks like a little bit like this, but it's got the big garage doors in the front of it. Kind of cool. So one cool thing about North Manitou is, so we camped on this side of the island. We paddled around here. This is where the village was. And so now we're gonna camp one more night on the island before we scoot back to the mainland. And we had heard from a park ranger that after Labor Day, was it Dimmock's Point? This is a research station. Actually, that point of the island is off limits to people in general. You haven't heard of a piping plover? It's a bird. So they are endangered. They nest in the Great Lakes, whatever. So that whole point that's circled is they basically off limits because the bird, they like sandy, kind of gravelly kind of areas to be able to nest and have their, do their mating. Well, that whole point's off limits, but in the off season, you can camp out there. So there's a really cool campsite. So we came around off after being in that village, and you see again, what these birds need is kind of a rocky, sandy shoreline. And so this is kind of the shoreline that we camped at, or that we landed at, looking back at the mainland over here. And it was actually kind of a really cool campsite. So yeah, that's what a piping plover looks like. So, but yeah, the Sleeping Bear Dunes area is kind of where they're kind of everything. So it's a shorebird. So, but yeah, that's what kicked us out of that area for 9 months out of the year. But we found a really cool campsite.
And it's tagged.
Oh, yeah, they tag them. So yeah, we kind of went back in here, and there's actually some like containers that must have had been stuff for when the researchers are camping there, some stuff. But it was kind of a neat area. We were able to put our hammocks up and kind of in the middle of a little foresty area. There's a couple little paths that went out to the beach and everything. So so jot that down. It's a really cool campsite. There. Again, we like to eat pretty good, and somebody had set up kind of like a little table here between a couple of trees, and so I think we did taco night that night. So 3 or 4 days you can keep a tomato, an onion, an avocado, that kind of stuff. You can buy pre-made, pre-cooked chicken, and I'll get it and I'll kind of shred it up in the morning, put in a little taco stuff with a little bit of little oil and whatnot, and kind of let it marinate, and then just heat it through. And it didn't take much to pack the shells, so we had a taco feast that night. You heat it up in your gear there. So yeah, we like to get creative. I mean, we don't starve. Usually I can get away. They have the little freeze-dried meals that you add water to. There's a lot of sodium in them and whatever else is in them. Usually I can get away with stuff that I can concoct and whatnot, and it's still lightweight, compactable. You can put it in the boat. So yeah, you can get pretty creative. So we eat pretty well. So back to 2014, same North Manitou. This is where we got weathered in, and we did that like 11, 12-mile hike around that kind of southern end of the island. So these are the paths that you see. I mean, they're established, but again, they don't get a lot of foot traffic there. We didn't see as many of the old, farming settlements kind of thing on this part. I think there might be a few more north, but that's another big, long 10, 12-mile hike that we didn't get to. But yeah, it's fun to do the hiking. So hiking on South Manitou. So this is my 2022 trip. So we left our Popple campsite, and there's basically one path in, one path out. And once you get to that main drag, then there's offshoots so you can go and see different stuff. And we had some pretty good weather. It rained. Usually when I go on trips, I'll have like a pair of sandals or chacos, and I'll usually bring socks. Like instead of bringing like hiking boots, I'll bring socks. I'll wear like the chaco sandals, and then I get kind of a hiking kind of thing. So it stops blisters and whatnot. So both of us didn't bring. We decided not to do that. We wore our sandals. Well, it's all sand. So you're wearing sandals. You're in kind of sand, everything's wet, it's sticking to you. By the time we got done hiking, it took about a month for the wear spots on my feet to heal because the sand got underneath my straps. I'm like, this was a big mistake. I went against my own good judgment and whatnot. But yeah, coming and going, and it was raining so hard at one point, you're just like 1 foot in front of the other. We gotta get back to camp eventually. But yeah, but both of us, it took a month before the sand that had abraded my feet on the hike. So either bring hiking or actually wear socks, and you might be all right. But yeah, this is some of the paths. Again, it's pretty dense in some areas. Some gets more foot traffic than others. There we go. So here you can see some of the, hold on, let me go back. Yeah, you can see some of the old kind of farmsteads and things that are kind of tucked back in the woods, and I'm sure this was a bigger clearing at one point in time that, the nature's kind of taking things back. There's still some historical, cemeteries and things that are marked that you can go check out there. Here's another kind of log cabin-ish barn that you can just kind of go up and peek in and check out. This was a school at one point in time. You can look in, you can see the old, school benches, kind of a one-room schoolhouse kind of thing in that building. The bell is there. I think it's a good stopping point. We had lunch there. There's a little picnic table. We stopped on our hike. Do that. Again, we like to, eat and hike and kind of pack things along the way. You can see the path going back in there. So Florence Lake, there's actually a lake on South Manitou, and it's bigger than you think because we hiked around it. So yeah, that thing goes forever. But in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I get a kayak in there? How can I want to be able to paddle that, you know, if I could. But I guess if you're a fisherman or something, I think there's some fish in there. But yeah, it breaks things up. You see a lot of sand, you see a lot of trees, you see a lot of overlooks, but it's kind of neat to see some water, and you kind of hike around it. And there's some boggy areas. I'm glad I had sandals because there's some boggy areas you kind of hike through. And then there's some miscellaneous farm things in another site with some, you know, interpretational type signage there. So yeah, again, you get a little bit of the history, you get a little bit of the flora, you get a little bit of the fauna. And again, you're in the middle of an island that is like in the middle of Lake Michigan too. So you kind of check a lot of boxes. So, if you've been to Sleeping Bear Dunes, this is you know, South Manitou Island. You know, you're coming around the bend there, and you can actually hike to a point that kind of overlooks this, and it goes on forever. I mean, it's really kind of cool. So you can see where they got all that sand to help rebuild Chicago. It just keeps coming. So yeah, it's quite spectacular. So just some more of the shoreline there as you go around the islands. More of the shoreline. So on the very first trip that we did, there was 4 of us, and 2 were retirees and 2 weren't. So fortunately, we had to make it back to work. So we were able to go back. We knew we had some weather coming in, and we went from North Manitou back to South Manitou because it made the crossing a little bit shorter, and fog had rolled in. So if you are in this community, there's a lot of things that we do to prepare for that, between navigation, compass works, charts, homework ahead of time. You know where you're going, you know what bearings and headings to follow and whatnot. So my buddy Alan and I, we make it back over to South Manitou, and you're looking, you cannot see the mainland. It is gone. It is fogged out, nothing. So we're like, well, it's not that far, right? Yeah, it's only like 6-7 miles. We know where we're going. I got a chart, I got a compass, I know where I'm going. And so Susan and Kelly, they say, hey, we got time, we don't have to be back, we're gonna stick around another day. And so, okay, we're gonna take off. So we waited to maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, because then, you know, you still have a paddle, then a drive and whatnot. So we take off. So we leave and poof, we disappear into the fog. And, you know, if you're line of sight paddling, yeah, you can look up and your boat will go where you're looking. It'll go where your eyes are, and you think I'm pretty good. You know, I can you know, paddle straight. It's amazing if you aren't watching a compass within, because you're paddling. You know, effort. It doesn't take much of a little effort here before all of a sudden you're pointing that direction. So I'm looking at I'm like, I'm gonna see how far I can paddle straight. So I had my compass bearing, and it was 4 paddle strokes. I'm heading to Canada, and I'm like, holy smokes! So for about an hour and a half, I'm watching the dead point of my kayak where I got a compass out there, because you kind of waver back and forth because you're bouncing along the water. And my buddy Alan, he had a GPS, so we were like, let's test it, let's see how far. And we'd call out, you know, hey Al, hey. And again, you couldn't see each other. It was so dense, you know, we were paddling next to each other and we couldn't see each other. So we make it about halfway across between the island and the mainland, and all of a sudden we hear a little ding in the distance, little ship bell. And we're paddling along, so we kind of rafted up, and out of the fog, the sailboat that wasn't under sail, it was under power, comes by, and he's looking at us going, what? Like, and we're waving at him. You're like, I don't know. He literally came out of the fog, and poof, he disappeared, and he was gone. And we're like, so we kept on going. So at the beginning of the so Sleeping Bear Dunes itself on the mainland is just this glowing gold orb of sand. And I mean, you can see it in satellite photos if you look at the Earth kind of thing. You couldn't see it. It was nowhere to be found. And at the beginning of the presentation, there's that red cannery building where they have the ships and everything. So again, we did our homework. We hit that red building dead on. We hit the beach, and until we hit the beach, it appeared. It was right there. We're like, this is awesome. It was great. So yeah, it pays to know what you're doing navigation-wise. But yeah, we hit the beach out of the fog. So yeah, that was a neat experience. But yeah, that ship guy's probably going, what the heck are those 2 guys doing?
Did you figure out which worked better, the GPS or the compass?
I like a compass, you know. Batteries can die in a GPS. But it was kind of cool to kind of see, he'd call out and whatnot. But I was really surprised at within a few strokes of not watching, you're pointing that way and you don't even know it. You think you're paddling that way and you're, again, so you kind of get, it's kind of exhausting because you're like focusing. You know, usually you're paddling and you're looking around like, ooh, look at the trees, you know. But yeah, focusing on the front of your boat for a period of time, you kind of get eye weary kind of thing. It's kind of odd. So.
Rudders on the back?
Say what?
You have rudders on the back so you can steer a little bit?
Our boat, we have skegs versus a rudder.
Okay.
So it's kind of, we can talk for an hour about that too. But you're using the boat to steer and whatnot. But yeah, whatnot. But you can use a rudder. But yeah, that was a unique fog experience. So just more of the shoreline. This was, if you look through the trees at our popple camp and you kind of look down at our boats, we were kind of up on the bluff, and you can see back across over to North Manitou. I was kind of like, I always like the way that picture, you know, kind of in thirds kind of thing. I thought that was kind of neat photo. Again, this is us coming from the mainland up to the lighthouse, and so that's cool. You always have a marker too, because you know if it's a clear day, line of sight, you can see that lighthouse for miles. So, and just more of the shoreline as you're going along there. And on a clear day, look how clear that water is. I mean, there's parts that you're like, am I in the Caribbean or what? It's amazing. I mean, the Great Lakes, I mean, you get in parts of the Georgian Bay and you could be in 6 inches of water, you can be in 200 feet of water, and you're picking rocks off the bottom. It's so clear. Yeah, it's actually beautiful. And there's more. So on the south side of South Manitou, there's a shipwreck. And this is actually owned by the state now. So it's the Francisco Morazan. And there's a lot of cool history. Wikipedia is great for a lot of things. It was a warship. It was a passenger ship. It was a cargo ship. And it was delivering canned goods and chicken and a bunch of stuff. It was leaving Chicago, and it ran aground in the 60s. So this is what it looked like, before it ran aground. And it's got a lot of war history. I think it was a passenger ship and whatnot. But it had a bunch of different names. But when it actually hit ground, it was the Francisco Morazan. I think it was 1958, I think. It might have been 60. But you see the ruins of the ship. So in addition to everything else, it's like a shipwreck. It's pretty cool. So it's really cool until you get up close to it. So has anybody ever been around cormorants? Yeah. Have you seen what cormorants can do? Cormorants are just pooping machines. So you can see them roosting on there. So depending on where you're at downwind, holy smokes. Yes, cormorants are not the neatest birds in the world, but depending on which way the wind's blowing, you really don't want to be downwind. But you can paddle right up to it. It's there. You can see the hunks of the ship are on its side, but yeah, you can see the cormorants all, kind of roosting on the edge there. Cormorants don't like people, so that's why you don't see a whole lot of them out at the Erie Islands. They started to take out Green Island, and I think they did some things to kind of push them away from there, but they were stripping all the leaves off the trees because of their poop and whatnot. But yeah, it's kind of neat because not often. I've seen shipwrecks underwater. I've seen some really cool stuff, but this one you can kind of go up, right up next to it. It's kind of cool. So there's us coming around the island. So the lighthouse has been the lighthouse is around the corner from here. You keep hooking around, but this is kind of coming up to it. There's the shipwreck there, kind of up close. So yes, you have all that, and then there's more. There's a shipwreck you get to check out. So if you're a hiker, you don't get to see that. So weather is always a factor. So when we got weathered in on the first trip we were there, so this is South Manitou Island here. So that's where we left, and we came across to North Manitou, and that's the storm that hit us. So I always thought that picture is pretty dramatic. It literally just came over and enveloped the island. And that line, the sun just disappeared. It was gone. So that's why you have good gear and, bring a good book, because you might get weathered in a little bit. So that's what kept us off the water. We were going to circumnavigate the island back to our campsite on that day, and we we're gonna sit this one out and do a little hike in and see what else we can see on the island. So, yeah, so that just, as kayakers, we have contingencies for our contingencies. And again, we do a lot of skills practice and training, and a lot of the best things that happen as someone that does this is the decisions you make on shore. So go, no go, those kinds of things. So we do a lot of prep work, and you have to understand your ability level and skill level and the environment and where you're at too. So yeah, that's pretty dramatic over there. So yeah, so yeah, I kind of squished like 3 trips into one there. So questions. I love talking about this stuff. Yeah, go. You had your hand first. Yeah, go ahead.
What if the Navy Park Service controls it, but do you know there's going to be a campsite before you get there?
Not necessarily.
But it's not. And then second is there cell service?
Well, yes, I did have cell service. Yes, I did have cell service out there. It's not humongous. It's not like going to South Bass Island. You'll be able to find a campsite. And even if you didn't, at the bay campsites, there's 15 sites out there or more. Yeah, there's more than that. So, and again, if we had to share a site with somebody, we'd be like, yeah, it's set up kind of thing. So, yeah. Now that's on south. North, have at it. Yeah, have at it. So something that's pretty unique. So if you want to go out there by kayak, so this just made the news. So there's the ferry. It's a family-run ferry that comes out of Leland that services both islands, and the ferry dock where it's located on north is deteriorating. I don't know if it's shifting sands or whatnot. So the Park Service has decided they're going to replace that ferry dock. So at least for this season, it doesn't look like the commercial ferry is going to land at North. So if you want to kayak out there, there's nobody out there this year. So there's a little bit of scuttlebutt in the news because there's a family business and that's how they make their money. But they do tours and things along the Sleeping Bear Dunes too. But as far as ferry service to North Manitou for this year, it doesn't look like it's happening. Here's what it is. It's one of those things where the historical dock, where it was for years, the Park Service says we know better and put it in a different location. Well, guess what? It didn't work, and the people that knew what they're doing, so they're going to put the dock back where it originally was. So yeah. So if you want to go to North Manitou, have at it this year. No one's going to be out there. So all right, we saw there's a hand over here. There's another hand.
I got my answer. South coverage.
Oh yeah. It's close enough. We did have cell coverage. Yes.
How were the black flies?
We didn't. Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. I've been there several times throughout the year. Again, I get that question a lot. So another reason why I'm a kayaker and not necessarily a hiker. So by the nature of what we do, we're in coastal areas. So there's usually some sort of prevailing wind or something. So usually where we're at, there's, if there are mosquitoes or black flies, now you take about 10 steps into the woods, they'll carry you away. But fortunately, we're usually in coastal areas where the wind is usually keeping the bugs at bay. I still take bug dope and whatnot, and I tend to not like to do that if I don't have to, because I don't want to crawl into my tent with stuff and kind of gross type stuff. But yeah.
What month did you go?
I've been there in July, I've been there in August, I've been there after Labor Day, which was wonderful because the weather, the temperatures, it's not very hot. I mean, it's not super hot to begin with because you have the wind bringing the breeze off the lake. But the times I've been there, it's been good weather and less bugs, So
nobody lives out there.
No one lives out there. Yeah, they'll put a park ranger.
Yeah.
They have park rangers. Now I think we passed one of the rangers on their way to Popple to check. I assume they had a knapsack on, and we passed them and said hello, and I think they were just kind of doing their job and checking things out. But it's pretty low key. It's not a whole lot.
Does it go between islands?
Yeah, it'll stop at usually it stops from Leland. It'll stop at north and then scoot over south and then head back. But yeah, there was on one of the trips. God bless them. We saw the ferry land, and there's backpacking, how you pack for backpacking. There was a guy that I think he unloaded his entire Winnebago onto his back. And this poor dude, he was pulling a cart. Now no pets are allowed. You can't bring animals out there. He had a cart. He had like full-size folding chairs. Like this guy was so weighted down, he looked miserable. I don't know who made him pack. I mean, he was like walking by us, and we're like, I can't believe you packed out. Because usually, you try to get. I'm not a gram weenie, but I'm not sawing off my toothbrush handle quite yet, but you can get stuff to put in a pack and go. But yeah, this guy he had a cooler, and I mean, it was like insane. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, some people, they say, like in hammocking, hang your own hang, or camp your own camp. I mean, that's on you, whatever you want to do. So, but we like to have a few little luxuries. I usually pack a chair. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a campfire?
At the Bay campground, you can. Not at Popple, and I don't think there's a fire ring at the weather station. North Manitou, nah, you can't. But there is community. You can have a campfire there. So, wait, did you guys do one? Did they have wood there for you, or you just pick up stuff that's?
You can harvest your own.
Okay.
They had like 5-foot wide fire pits.
Yeah.
Wood.
Yeah, they don't have like wood for sale or anything. It's not like they're selling it. So yeah, you got to pick up whatever you can. Enough driftwood, Yeah.
Oh, and they wanted you to take it dry. There's a lot of
Yeah. Yeah, as you can see, just like out in LA, man, it takes one little spark, and before you know it, things are gone. So, yeah, there's a time and place for it. I've had a lot of fun around campfires, and a lot of, it's fun sitting in the dark, shooting, chewing the cud with your buddy too. So.
How long does it take you to kayak out there?
It's only, if you're moving along pretty good, a little over an hour and a half or so. You can throw some wind into it. That trip where we went to North Man, it took a little longer as we were kind of winding around that lighthouse. But that was just there. Then you have to go up the shoreline too. Once you hit the island, then you got to figure out where you're going to land. So, yeah, go ahead.
How big was the swell?
When we were out there, I mean, the chop is only a foot and a half, 2 feet. I mean, you kind of, you don't have breakers coming in over your head. We were out at South Bass last year, and that was dramatic, right? Right, Patrick? That was the greatest. We organize an event every year at South Bass Island, 2 weeks after Memorial Day, and in 21 years, that was the craziest wind that we had, to where you had swells that the sunlight was coming through the swell, and we were out playing, and your buddy goes whoop, off the back end of it, and you haven't quite gone over yet. He just disappears. So yeah, those were swells. Those were breakers and swells. I left South Bass Island from the beach to Catawba an hour to the second. I went around the corner and I was shooting. I was flying. So yes. So
At least it wasn't a headwind.
yeah, headwind. Well, going over, we had a little headwind. Yeah, going over. Yeah, that's a whole other story. But all right. So who's signing up to go to North and South Manitou Islands? You got to check it out. It's really cool. It's doable even if you go over on the ferry and you take a boat over and paddle around the island. You can do that. When we do our event in South Bass Island, that's a good thing about it, because you can, if the weather's good, you can paddle, but there's always the out with the ferry as well. You can carry your gear on the ferry and kind of come and go. So it's a different way to experience it, but you can get out there, at least paddle the handrail, the coastline, and check it out. But it's totally worth it. Even if you